All right, guys, so this challenge, this is a mini challenge. Mini challenges, just like your drawing one, is that you are applying what you have learned. You have a goal to get to. How you choose to do it is a little bit up to you. You just have to make sure that you're meeting the benchmarks. Okay, and so this one, there are 6 separate sketches. Each one has a different focus that you can use, but you are pulling what you have learned on being able to position and draw shapes, using push and pop, rotate, translate, and variables to be able to do these challenges. There are a couple of requirements that you have to make sure that you're hitting. Those are the benchmarks. But how you implement is really up to you. Now, I do have a couple hints. For rectangles, sometimes we want to actually take a rectangle and manipulate some of the corners so we can have them rounded. You will use parameters. Okay, the other thing, and I will kind of briefly go over that in this video. The other thing is that if we are using arcs, maybe we don't need to use full circles and we want to use part of an arc, that would be very, very helpful for you. Okay, so here are the benchmarks. Each canvas size is going to be given by each picture. It will actually have the sizing stated on there. No errors in your code runs, every statement ends with a semicolon, so I shouldn't see anything in the console for errors. You're going to title each sketch. You're going to turn into me a total of 6 sketches in this assignment. Okay, each sketch is going to be titled with the drawing design title. All colors that you use have to be stored as variables. Okay, they should be stored as global variables. And in this one, you're going to be using the hex codes. So I would like to see this, where you're properly declaring your variable and your setup. You are storing those hex code values that are on each picture, and then you're going to appropriately use them so we are not writing the same thing multiple times. Okay. The next thing that I would say is you need to make sure that you are paying attention to draw order. Sometimes when we are looking at these shapes, we see more complex designs, and that's just because of how we are coloring certain shapes and layering them on top of each other. Okay, so I'm going to quickly kind of go through here talking about these, and then I will do some quick kind of helper ideas. The other thing that I wanted to mention. So you may end up having to use arcs and rectangles with rounded corners, but you might also want to be using the helper code to make sure that you can identify the mouse positions, because it's not just us getting some rectangle the same color. We are trying to actually match these. That's the challenge. So this one we can see it's going to be a canvas of 400 by 300. The name that you would put on that sketch is going to be CSS Battle Number 1 Simple Square. Okay, and here's what we got. Now if I look at this, what do I see? I got 2 colors. These are my hex code colors. This would be my background, and this would be my shape. This is a simple rectangle shape, so there's not much anything that I really need to do with that. Okay, so I could simply just create the rectangle for each one of these. So I'm going to walk through this one real quick. The idea of doing this, okay, so here's my colors. So let's go to here. I know that I'm going to end up having 2 colors, so let's call it color 1 and color 2. Color 1 is what? And we're going to use that color function. 5D3A3A. So it is with single quotes, hashtag 5D3A3A. Was it A3A? Yeah, 5D3A3A and B5E0BA. Let's just copy this. Oops. Color 2. (5BE0BA), 5BE0BA. Okay, so I have 2 colors. Now, let's look here. Okay, this is my screen size. my canvas size, so that's the 400 by 300. So here I'm going to do 400 by 300. Okay, my background is going to be this color 1, so I'm just going to go ahead and set that up, color 1. And now that's the color that I'm getting. That's the size that I'm getting, okay? So what you're going to do when you're going back and forth here is you're going to identify roughly how big these shapes are and trying to match this as exact as possible. Okay, so I see this rectangle that's in the left, and that's my color. So looking there, I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. I know that I'm going to fill it with that color too. And let's draw that rectangle. So 0, 0. I don't really need to do any special positioning right now. Let's say if I'm looking here, that looks like it's half. So I'm going to make that 200 wide. And then this looks like this is about 2/3 of the height. So I'll probably make this 200 by 200. So let's do 200. That would make it a square. And I do not have the right color, so let's look at 5BE. That's helpful. 5BE. Okay. 0B, 5B. Oh, B5E. B5E. So I'm continually making those changes until I'm getting the colors. Now, this has a stroke, so I know in setup I'm going to have to take off stroke. And a lot of these, you're going to end up having to have no stroke. Okay, so I have 400 by 300. I got the colors. I got my shapes. This looks like this is the same thing, okay? So that's what we are doing to recreate. We're noticing that that rectangle is approaching halfway. Well, I want to make sure that that's sized appropriately. I'm using these colors. They're stored as variables, okay? The last thing that I would need to do is I need to make sure that this is the title of my sketch right here, okay? All right, so that's how I would do one shape. Now let's look at some of the other ones. Here, if we're looking, this is actually multiple shapes. What shapes do we have? Well, we have the background. And then if I'm thinking in terms of draw order, this right here, this rectangle, if this is on the bottom and then I have a circle with no stroke, that's the same as the background, and I put it on top, then it looks like I'm making this shape. But really, I'm just stacking shapes on top of each other. Okay, so this is a full circle, and then I have a smaller circle above that circle, and I have a smaller circle above this circle. Now, all of them, for this shape, if I was changing the rect mode to center, and I had no stroke, I could even translate to the center position to make it easier to draw all of these. That would help to make sure that I'm doing this exact. This is 400 by 300, and those are my colors. Okay, let's look. Tesseract. This is almost the same, except I see two rectangles that I am rotating probably 45 degrees, and I'm stacking on top of each other. So this would be my first shape, second shape, third shape, and fourth shape. So I probably also want to translate those. I would like to look here, because now we see rectangles that are weird shaped. This, how would I do this? Well, this is actually also a rectangle. This would be an arc. Okay, so let's look here at the rectangle, how we would kind of approach that. Okay, so if I want to play around with these shapes, so let's change our rect mode to center. Okay, and then we want to translate to the very center of the screen. Translate to width divide by 2 and height divide by 2. Okay, now we can see our shape. Now let's kind of look at the different types of parameters that we can have. So I'm going to go into references, and we can go into our shapes. Okay, for rectangles, okay, you can't do this with squares. For rectangles, there are more parameters than what we have used. We have used x, y, width, and height. Height being the optional if you have a different height than your width. But we have top left, top right, and bottom left. This is for corners. okay? This is the radius of the corner. So if I give those values, I can adjust the radius. Now, so if I do, let's just do one. Let's do 50. That's my, now if I have 4 parameters, this is my x, my y, my width, and my height, okay? So since I'm using all 8, I'm going to explicitly state my width and my height, even if they are square in shape. Okay, now these last ones, so if I do, let's say 50, now I'm rounding. With 5 of them, it's rounding all corners. Okay, now if I start doing other ones, it's only going to take the very first one, the top left, and then it's just not going to give any for the rest of them. So if we look, this is 50, this is this rounded corner. Now, there's a couple ways that we can do this, but if you're wanting like an actual circle rounding, then we want to make sure that whatever number we're putting for our radius should be at least half of the width and height if it's a square, to have it look like it's like a circle shape. So that's a much better rounding. Now if we look at the pictures, this, we would want to get this, so we're going to try to play around with that. But here, we need more of a rounding for those shapes, and we want a sharp corner. So if we did, so top left, let's do top right, 100. 100, 0, and we can get interesting shapes, okay? That looks like a circle, and I have a rectangle. However, I could also actually just put maybe a rectangle or a triangle on top of a circle to try to create this shape, and if I have no stroke, I can create a complex shape, okay? So using this, let's try to play around with, now this is top left, so maybe trying to do something like this, top left, top right, bottom left. It goes in clockwise order starting from the top left. So I want these to actually have no radius, but these ones I want to have radius. So top left, top right, and I want no radius for the bottom 2. There we go. I mean, that looks kind of like a little ghost or something from a video game. So I can switch these around to do different shapes. There's a lot of different ways that I could approach this, but using that would be a good thing to be able to tackle those. This is an arc. And so if we look in our references, it is, let's look at arcs. Arcs are, this is an arc, this is arc, arc. Okay, but we can choose if we want it to be filled or not filled. We can choose how we want it to look, okay? So this one right here, if I don't say no fill, then it's going to try to fill it. But it's not giving the edge, okay? So when you're looking here, let's scroll down. Okay, this is your width and your height, your starting position, okay? Which would be that center point, and then your start and stop. That's where you're going to want to focus. Your start and stop, it's going to be in radians. So if I'm looking in pictures here, this would be 0. Now, since we are doing our coordinates a little bit different, instead of us going from here is like my 0 right here, and then I'm working my way around this way, where this would be pi over 2, this would be pi right here, and I keep working around. This is 3 pi over 2, and then this is 2 pi. We are actually doing it the opposite. So instead of us going that way, we are going this way. Okay, so I have to state where I want to start. So if I wanted to get this arc right here, I'm saying I want to start at 0, and I'm going to pi over 2. Now, if you don't like that understanding, remember, instead of you guys using angle mode, it defaults to radians. If you wanted to use it instead of using stuff in terms of pi, you could do it in terms of degrees, which would mean that you're starting at 0 and you're going to 90. All right. If I wanted it to start here, if I wanted it to start, in the bottom corner, maybe here, then that means that I am starting at 180 if I'm using degrees, 180, and then maybe I want it to go up to here, then this would be 270, okay? So you got to pay attention to those. So if I'm having it start at 180 to 270, that's how I'm going to balance that out to try to get that shape. You just need to play around with it, okay? This is really, really useful, but you have to be able to play around and decide what you want. There are different modes for what you want. If you wanted the pie shape where you wanted it to actually cut out the slice, if you wanted to draw a straight line from that cut, you can do that. If you want it to be open, so you don't want to have a line, but you want to have a line on here. Now, this is the stroke, okay? If you wanted fill, that's what the color is on the inside. So you're going to have to actually state what you want, okay? If I take this, just so we can see, that is, and I already translated to the center. There it is. Now this is with no stroke, okay? If I take off my stroke, there's the stroke, but it's only showing on that arc part, okay? So I can play around with this. This is my start. I'm starting at 0, and I'm going to half pi. If I wanted to go from, let's say, pi to pi times 2. There we go, okay? I just have to pay attention to where my start and stop is, knowing that I'm always going clockwise. All right? Those are the challenges that you're doing. Make sure that you're paying attention to the target size. You're using the colors. These should look as exact to these as possible. Bounce back and forth, making sure that everything looks really, really good, okay? This is your challenge to make sure that you understand how to do everything that we have learned up to now, because after this, we're doing games and objects and all kinds of other cool stuff. All right, good luck. Have fun.